last guy was super creepy.
Dark Animus is going to be one of the more tedious fights in this raid because it's incredibly planned and incredibly hard to maximize the intentions of that plan. The general concept of the fight itself is kind of like an inverse Russian doll mechanic. And how this works is quite different on Heroic and Normal, so we'll start with Normal. There's going to be 4 different types of golem android dudes. The first is the regular small dudes. There's 25 of those. There are 8 large dudes, 2 massive dudes, and 1 main boss, the Dark Animus. The fight starts with all 25 regular small golems active, and each represents 4 anima on their bar. When a regular golem is stacked with another golem, they get buffed damage and attack speed by 250% and movement by 30%, which means everybody will be assigned to quote-unquote tank their own golem and strategically bring them to drop-off points as they die so that their anima gets dumped at the correct next target. If 8 anima have been dropped off into an individual large golem, they become active. And they do an ability called Crimson Wake, which is a 30-second void zone, and they fixate on a random raider. Yet the strategy will have it such that we never activate any of these large golems. All anima from regular small ones will go immediately to the next one, the massive golem. There are 2 massive golems in the fight space, and as long as there's at least 1 anima in the massive, it becomes active and needs to be tanked, and it can hold up to 36 anima. These guys do an ability called Matter Swap, which is a dispellable debuff on its current target for 12 seconds. When it expires or is dispelled, it swaps locations with the furthest raider from that point, plus a bunch of arcane damage equal to the affected player's max health is split between both players who are affected in the swap. However, it's critical to note the longer that they are affected by the debuff, the more damage gets distributed to the other raider. To keep it simple, we just dispel the debuff around 5 seconds after it was originally placed, and that will evenly distribute it amongst them in a safe manner. In addition, they do an ability called Explosive Slam, which is used regularly. It strikes the ground in front of them and damages all players within 12 yards of that point, increasing damage in future slams, similar to the Strengths and Will of the Emperor in MSV. The Dark Animus can hold anywhere between 0 and 100 anima, and becomes active when there's at least 1 anima on it. This is why it's very important that we drop off smaller golems at specific mobs so that we're not activating the more difficult mobs before we're ready for them. Specifically, the Dark Animus will do Siphon Anima, which means every 6 seconds he'll drain 1 anima from all golems in the room. This is why we have to strategically Russian doll all the prior and smaller golems, because if all of them are still alive and he becomes active, he takes 1 from each, and when he hits 100, it's a wipe. And if there's 25 regular mobs active and 1 or 2 large, that's like 10-20 seconds and it's a wipe right then and there. The Dark Animus also does Touch of Animus, which is a debuff on an RNG raider, which does a dot that does fire damage for the rest of the fight. At certain points of anima, the Dark Animus starts doing more and more abilities. At 10 anima, he'll start doing Ring of Spheres at the current tank target. Basically, some fireballs will go around the current tank target, and the tank has to quickly leave the circle by popping just one of the balls to get out before all of them collapse in and kill them. And at 25 anima, the RNG Touch of Animus target starts radiating damage in the area around. At 75 anima, he starts casting Interrupting Jolt. And what that is a raid-wide nature damage, which must be accounted for because if you're casting while he does it, it interrupts your spell casting and silences you for 8.5 seconds. So you gotta stop casting when he's casting Interrupting Jolt. And of course, once he hits 100 anima, it's a raid-wide pulse of damage that will almost certainly cause a wipe within a few seconds. So the strategy is everyone will be assigned one of the small golems to quote-unquote tank. And it's your goal to kill it in the correct position beside one of the 2 massives. When a massive becomes active, it becomes tanked, and so we'll have 2 tanks, 1 on each massive, and ideally all Animus goes immediately from the smalls to the massives until both massives are capped, and that no large golems are ever activated. Those are the size that is between the small and the massives. Obviously, the other goal is that no anima goes to the Dark Animus until we're ready for it. Once all the massives are capped, there will still be a few regulars left, the small ones that is. When called for, we'll then kill those regulars beside the Dark Animus and it becomes active. He'll then start draining the remaining few regulars and one per massive, and this will allow us to maximize the fight length before he hits 100. There may be some finesse moves where we juggle the remaining anima between the last regulars so that we can re-top off the massives, and it adds like 12 seconds to the fight, but that's when we're getting fancy. In terms of finesse tanking ideas, the Dark Animus should always be tanked by the non-ring debuffed tank, so that's a tank swap. And we're going to dispel the matter swap from the massives after about 4 to 5 seconds, with both targets, both the tank and the far off person, being fully topped off. This is a good timing so that the damage hit is balanced and it won't kill anybody. You got to make sure to avoid the slam location of the massives, and the tank targeted by the ring needs to move out by only taking one single hit, not wait for them to collapse in and one-shot you. The rest of the raid just needs to move out of the raid stack when they're faunted, and also to obviously stop casting during Jolt so you're not silenced for 8.5 seconds. Unfortunately, Heroic is a little bit more stepped up. The fight starts with a total of 152 anima around the space instead of 100. This is because the Dark Animus starts active from the start with 52 anima. This severely caps the length of the fight and also increases it more complicated because of the Dark Animus being active from the start. The Dark Animus does an ability called Empower Golem, which means that the least health golem is healed by 3% and increases its damage by 24% until the end of the fight, stacking if it's continuously the same golem being targeted. This is more about the end of the fight than the start of the fight, because at the end it'll be the Animus and two massives, and of course the two massives will be the only targets available for that spell. The good news is the Dark Animus doesn't start its siphon until 2 minutes in, and so it's our job to, while dealing with the tanking responsibilities, get all the Animus where it needs to be so that he's not draining from 24 targets at that 2-minute point. The main tank will also get a little fire dot when they do the ring mechanic, but other than that, the only difference in Heroic is a different math equation for how and when we have to kill Animus and Anima into various targets. It really just boils down to 90 seconds into the fight, we must kill 18 of the 25 regulars into the massives, leaving 7 alive, and then we can kill 1 of the 7 right into the Dark Animus because it doesn't change the timing of the fight, and then 2 minutes into the fight, it starts to siphon, so we kill 2 regulars into massives to top the massives off because they've had a little bit siphoned off of them, and then we kill the 2 remaining regulars to put their anima into the 2 other regulars, and then we finally let the last 2 regulars into the massives to top the massives up, and then the rest is just a timer mechanic, and you basically ignore Animus from that point on.